keep books safe from the greater population and keep the greater population safe from these books. I was honestly a little bit disappointed by this series. It's a fantasy romance, and so of course she falls in love with the sword. Say hi. Say hi to your fans. Hey Finley, it's Julia, the ex-English major, and today I am getting back into the swing of things.
We are back, baby. We are back. We're back. Classic.
I am not sure if you noticed, but I have been away for a little bit. I had pre-filmed a couple videos before I decided to go on a quick little weekend getaway vacation with full intentions of editing those videos so that way there wouldn't be a gap. And then I didn't do that. Work got busy, life got in the way, and then I just kind of didn't want to edit. So we are back in the swing of things. For me, it's been a little while since I've filmed. I feel like I blinked and suddenly it's the end of May. And so I will be doing my end of May wrap up. Actually, right after I film this, I'm going to go ahead and quickly edit my end of April wrap up and hopefully get that one out to you guys since we are kind of in the last week here. Suddenly it is the end of May. So I read a couple books for this month, so going to go ahead and jump on into them to give my 2 cents in case you are not super familiar with how I do my wrap-ups. I always give a arbitrary rating, and then I go ahead and give a brief overview, things that don't include spoilers. A lot of my books here this month had quite a few twists, only getting into things that would be discoverable maybe on the back of the book, reading an overview summary, or things that happen in the first few chapters, but don't get into any spoilers just in case you want to go into it yourself. And yeah, the whole point is for you to see if any of these books are something that you want to add to your TBR, but I don't want to go ahead and ruin the fun for you. So without much further ado, let me go ahead and get on into it. Okay, so the first book that I ended up reading, I started reading this one actually in April, but it bled over into May, is Was Willem by M.R. Carey. I began talking about this book at the end of my last wrap up. If it keeps going the way it's going right now, I'm going to love this book. The first 100 pages are, I kid you not, like Frankenstein meets the Starving Saints. This book feels made for me, so I will go ahead and link that one there in case you want to go ahead and see that. At the end of that last wrap up, I was really, really hopeful about this book, and this one did not disappoint. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I'm going to give this one 6 interesting pieces of medieval folklore that all come together in one awesome found family. I thought that this book was absolutely fantastic. It's pretty different than a lot of the books that I had been reading, as well a lot of the books that were in my list here for this month. So it kind of stood out in that way too. But in this story, we are following a host of these odd people, fairies, creatures, mythological beings, as they are kind of teaming up to fight evil, essentially. It is really, really good. We are mostly following a character named Willem and his life and meeting these people, but throughout the story it weaves in different casts of characters. So we've got witches, we've got river creatures, we've got sorcerers. It has a lot of these really, really interesting pieces, and everyone is kind of teaming up essentially to fight against kind of the big bad evil man who is wreaking havoc on this town. It is a group of outcasts. They've all been cast out of the town for one reason or another, and now that the children in the town are being sacrificed, they decide to kind of stand up against the evil sorcerer who is going to be doing the sacrificing, and they learn to work together and learn that there are more important things than acceptance by the broader town. I thought it was really, really good. I don't want to get into too many spoilers, like I said, but I thought it was fantastic. It's a little bit dark, so if you're interested in kind of grim, dark fantasy, then this is absolutely one for you. It really actually kind of reminds me of The Devils, which is a book that I read earlier in the year. I believe it was actually last year that I read it. And so if you're interested in kind of medieval, grim, dark fantasy, that has to do with a lot of these kind of folk tales, thought it was really fun. So Was Willem, it's dark. but I thought it was really good. All right, the next book that I read was called Mad Mabel. This book, I am going to rate it 12 soap operas. It is really, really entertaining. It felt like you are watching a soap opera. It was extremely dramatic. It was pretty obvious, I guess. There were quite a bit of twists that you kind of can see coming a mile away, but it's just so entertaining that in my mind, it didn't really matter to me that I could see where a lot of it was going pretty clearly pretty early. I thought that it didn't really matter that I would say probably there are like 3 or 4 big twists and 2 or 3 of them were extremely obvious right from the beginning, but I thought that the characters were really, really lovable. The story itself was written really funny. Sally Hepworth's voice I thought was really, really intriguing. And so I really, really enjoyed it. It didn't really matter to me that it had some pretty questionable portrayals of mental health issues that are already pretty stigmatized. It sounds terrible that like that didn't bother me. Don't go into this book expecting a realistic portrayal of some pretty serious topics. It is kind of your soap opera, but it was really, really funny. I thought it was a really good time. And so I thought from a pure storytelling standpoint, it was absolutely worth it. Very much a blast. Just don't go into it expecting that you are going to get a realistic portrayal of some pretty real topics, pretty heavily stigmatized topics. It is more of a hee hee ha ha fun time and less of a accurate rendering. Without getting into too many spoilers, the basic premise of the story is we are following our main character here named Mabel, and she is an elderly woman who has gotten away with murder. When she was a child, she killed someone. We don't know who she killed in the beginning of the story. We just know that she did her time in prison. And then because due to her age, she was released, and then now she has lived her life under a fake name and is trying to put the past behind her. There's really only one person who knows for sure who she is. It's her best friend, and it's kind of that friendship relationship that's even closer than any sort of romantic relationship would be, kind of these close female friends. And now Mabel is elderly. She's in the kind of final years of her life, and she is this kind of old curmudgeon who keeps to herself with the exception of that one really close friend. But there is a person next door who has a young child, and this young child kind of starts poking around at Mabel.
Certainly wound up all the loose ends in this case. Blasted meddling kid.
And so we are kind of going back and forth between the present day and the past, learning about Mabel's history and the pieces of her life that she is trying to forget, as well as her now being this elderly person, and trying to hide her past from her neighbors, and specifically from the extremely, extremely nosy child who just cannot leave well enough alone. So it's really funny. It's kind of heartwarming. And I thought it was extremely entertaining. I don't want to spoil but some of the twists have to do with both mental health issues as well as some pretty violent. I mean, you can tell it's going to be at least a little bit of a violent book if it's all about hiding a murder. But I thought it was really, really good. Okay, the next book that I read was Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I picked this book up because it was a recommendation from a friend of mine, and I had it on my shelf for a little bit here, and I finally decided that this would be the time, and I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really fun. This is kind of upper YA. I don't tend to like too much YA, but I decided to give this one a go, and I thought it was fantastic. There is a woman she was an orphan, and in this world, orphans are given to libraries, and so she is an apprentice librarian in these kind of enchanted libraries where the books themselves turn into monsters. If books are not cared for properly, a lot of these books are extremely dangerous, and they can kind of turn into these big raging monsters. And so the point of librarians is both to kind of care for and keep these books safe and protect them, but also to essentially fight the books if needed and kind of keep books safe from the greater population and keep the greater population safe from these books. Our main character, Elizabeth, has been growing up in these libraries, and she in particular people see her as odd. She doesn't quite belong. And then there is one particular book that is absolutely calling to her. It's one of these most dangerous grimoires. And one night, it seems everyone's asleep. And she is the only one in the library who is awake, and the head librarian is found murdered. One of the extremely dangerous grimoires escapes, and she hunts it down and ends up killing this beast that the book has turned into, and she then is under suspicion of being the one who has murdered the head librarian, and so she has to be taken to the town. She is escorted by a warlock and the warlock's very strange servant that she can't quite understand what's wrong with the servant, but there's something off about him. And so she is essentially being sent to face trial for this murder that she didn't do. And along the way, she learns to get closer with the warlock and the strange servant that the warlock has serving him. Adventures ensue, and she is trying to get down to the mystery of who ended up killing the head librarian, who is essentially like a mother figure to her, and trying to uncover the grander plot line. I thought it was absolutely fantastic. I really liked it. It does have a lot of your typical YA tropes. It is a little bit I don't know, juvenile in places, but I thought it was really, really pretty. I really liked the word choices. I really liked the ideas there, kind of very creative, kind of the librarians who are protecting books from people and people from books. And so I thought it was really heartwarming. It is definitely a good time if you want a quick kind of beach read. That's something that you're just going to not want to put down. I really, really enjoyed it. The Sorcery of Thorns, I will give this, I don't even think I rated this. Oopsies. I'm going to give this one 4 transforming grimoires. I thought it was a fairly good time. Definitely a solid recommend. I'm not going to say it's anything super groundbreaking, but I thought it was really, really fun and just kind of a good little escape. Alrighty, the next 2 books here I read are part of a duology. So I read A River Enchanted by Rebecca Ross, and then the sequel, A Fire Endless. And I'm going to give this 3 flowers. I was honestly a little bit disappointed by this series. I have heard really, really good things, and I absolutely love Wild Reverence, which is another book by Rebecca Ross that I thought was just absolutely fantastic.
Not mad. I'm just disappointed.
It wasn't horrible, but it just wasn't really doing it for me. It sounds super interesting. So it's very inspired by Celtic folklore, Celtic mythology. We have this island that is in tune with magic, and the island is kind of bisected. There's 2 halves. There's 2 clans. We have a side of the island that magic is super commonplace, and it is something that is well known and loved in the town, but in order to use magic, it comes at an extreme price, and essentially you're going to die. The more that you use magic, the more kind of your soul you give up. But that side of the island has plenty of food. Things are pretty much idyllic. Everyone's looking out for each other. And then the other half of the island, there is no price to magic, essentially. You can perform magic for pretty much anything, for giving up nothing. But there are extremely strict rules, and that side of the island, it has famine. It's very cold, hard, bloodthirsty, and at one point in history, the 2 halves of the island were kind of united in this treaty of marriage, and the marriage absolutely fell apart. The husband was of the cold half, and he was pretty abusive, and the wife absolutely loathed living there, and so she ran away, and then that kind of cemented these 2 halves of the island as enemies. And we are following our character Jack as he has grown up on the island and then eventually escaped because he wanted to study music on the mainland. But he has been called back to his hometown. And while he's there, there are these women who are mysteriously going missing from his half of the island. And nobody really knows where they're going. They're vanishing without a trace. And it is believed that the other half is stealing them away, but nobody knows for what purpose. And so he is trying to uncover the mystery of what's happening to these girls, why they're disappearing. And he learns as well that he is able to wield magic through his song. He's a bard. And, you know, it sounds like something that I would absolutely really, really like, but I just didn't feel connected to pretty much any of the characters. It's not like they were unlikable. It just felt like I didn't feel like I could fully understand any of the characters. They felt very far removed. They were pretty distant. And it may have been just the writing style, but it didn't feel like any of them were real people. It felt like they were almost puppets or kind of very, very much like 2D objects as opposed to real people in a story. We're following quite a few different couples as well, kind of across both sides of the island. And there was a couple that I really did not like, where there was a woman who was a healer, and she is the second wife of a man whose first wife died in childbirth, and he is the kind of the head honcho, the head guard. And I did not like them, but by the end of the second book, they had the most kind of important story arc, specifically the kind of head honcho captain of the guard. He had kind of the most moving story arc, and I felt a little bit disappointed that it was them because they had kind of the most interesting pieces that happened to them in the story, but I was the least attached to them and their kind of plights. I've heard people talk really, really good things about this series, and so if it sounds something that you'd be interested in, I don't want to bash it too much, but for me, I was just let down, and maybe I had really, really high expectations because I had seen so many people say that specifically the first book was kind of one of their favorites that they had read in the past few years. It was kind of on a lot of those best of lists that I'd seen both online as well as people in my real life. A lot of my friends like to read. I had seen a lot of people that I know personally in my day-to-day life also recommending these books. And so I was really, really looking forward to it, and I was just kind of let down. And so I don't want to scare you off from reading them, but if you're kind of on the fence about it, I would maybe wait and see if there's something else to pick up. You may have different opinions on them than I did, but for me, I couldn't connect with the characters. The writing was pretty. The writing was beautiful. It's Rebecca Ross. I think that she does a really, really good job of writing lyrically, but just for me, it didn't do it. The next book that I picked up here is the Witchwood Knot by Olivia Atwater. So previously, a few months ago, I read Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater, and so I loved Half a Soul. I raved about it, and I decided to pick up some of her other books. This was a separate series. Instead of it being Regency, it was Victorian. And so I picked this one up. It's the first book in her Victorian fairy tales. And this one was also a letdown. This book gets 2 willow trees. I liked a lot of what was happening in this story, but the romance felt extremely forced to me. And, I thought it was a little bit disappointing because I know how good Olivia Atwater's romances can be and how well she can write. And this one, it didn't do it. I don't know if it was just rushed or what, but something about this one, I couldn't quite get into it. Felt like it was relying really heavily as well on characters and knowledge from her Regency fairy tale series. And so I think that this one you definitely need to, even though it's a different series, you definitely need to read probably all of the Regency fairy tales first. And I've only read the first one, but even still, it felt like entire chapters were lifted from the books the book that I had already read, Half a Soul. There were entire chapters that were just rehashing things that happened in them, and there are characters within this. So it's definitely, even though it's a separate series, it's the same. And I guess it makes sense because if we're going by the time period, the Regency time period kind of bled into the Victorian time period, and so history kind of layers itself, and so it makes sense that it would be in the same world, but there was no real indication of that. It kind of felt like when you are required to watch the Marvel end credit scene in order to understand the next movie that came out in the franchise, and after a while it's just like, hey, can I just enjoy a book? And maybe that's me, but I was not quite a fan of how heavily it wove into the other story personally. So you pretty much need to read her other series before you can pick this one up, in my opinion. But even when you do, there are entire chapters that are just lifted from that series and retold. But essentially here we are following a governess named Winifred Hall. She's hired by this woman who was kind to her when she was a child. Winifred grew up in work homes, and then she was essentially adopted by the Lord Sorcier character from the first series, and she had this elderly woman who kind of was always nice to her, and then this elderly woman, now that Winifred has grown up, she is saying that her home is haunted by fairies, and that she needs Winifred to come and work as a governess to protect her grandson. The elderly woman is on her deathbed, and they're in this kind of creepy, gothic, spooky home that was built from these kind of sacred trees. And even though fairies are supposed to be gone from England, the elderly woman is convinced that there are fairies in this home and that they are playing tricks on the family and will one day harm her grandson. And her son does not believe that fairies exist at all. And so she essentially has hired Winifred to protect her son, and it ends up being beneficial that she is there, because one day she discovers, this is from the back of the book here, but one day she discovers that the grandson has been replaced, and he is nothing but a block of wood who has been enchanted by a fairy to look like the grandson, but he has been taken. And so Winifred has to kind of venture into the depths of this creepy, spooky house in order to get her charge back, get the grandson back. You know, it was just okay. There was kind of a forced, shoehorned romance at the very end there that, in my opinion, just didn't need to be there. It was helpful for her story arc. It is mentioned very briefly as a trigger warning in the front. Winifred has a history of, she is a sexual assault survivor as a child. And so it is helpful, I guess, to kind of watch her navigate love and her feelings on her own terms. And especially when she's dealing with the father of the house and his kind of unwelcome advances versus the welcome advances from this creature. So I understand why that was put in for that, but it didn't need to be there. I didn't really believe it. And so, though it was an important part of her story arc of kind of learning to come to terms with herself and what she wants, and as a foil to the human versus the monster character, but for me, I didn't like it. I didn't buy it. It would have been fine, I guess, in a lot of books, but I know what Olivia Atwater can do and how well her characters can kind of be well written and come together. And for me, this one just didn't do it. So that is the Witchwood Knot. If you are a big fan of the Regency fairy tale series, then this one might be something for you because it builds off of a lot of pieces from that. And we have a lot of the same characters and a lot of the same story arcs. And it has Olivia Atwater's really, really good writing style, but just the story didn't do it for me. The characters didn't feel, I liked Winifred and I liked the characters, but they didn't feel very believable together. They didn't quite feel like people that would come together naturally. Overall, this one is probably one you can skip unless you are a really big Olivia Atwater fan, and you really, really liked the Regency fairy tale series and kind of want to see the next progression of kind of the next generation. Next, I finally picked up The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is another one of those books that I had seen on best of lists, and then I had my friend Ariana has been telling me that I need to read this book over and over again. So Ariana, I finally read it, and I liked this one. I thought that this wasn't anything groundbreaking, but I'm gonna give it a solid middle of the road. This one earns 6 Leviathans. This is a honestly like Sherlock Holmesy duo set in a fantasy world, but the fantasy world is really just a backdrop for the murder mystery that's happening, as opposed to it being super reliant on you understanding what's happening in the world. The world is just an interesting background for the murder mystery. And so we have these two characters. We have this kind of young apprentice who he is an apprentice investigator. He got a perfect score on his entrance exams, but he apparently was a really bad student. But he has been biogenetically engineered to where he has a photographic memory if he is able to smell these, associate the memory to a scent. And so he and other people who are like him, he's not the only one who's been biogenetically engineered. A lot of characters in the story have been modified in one way or another to give them these superhuman abilities. But he is somebody who he will kind of open up a smelling salt jar and then will associate everything he sees at the crime scene with the scent. And so then when he smells the scent again, he can 100% with perfect accuracy remember exactly what happened while he was smelling that. So he is used for investigating the crime scenes and interviewing witnesses, etc. And he is the apprentice to this extremely, extremely strange woman who she is kind of amazing at what she does. She makes these great leaps in deduction, but she will not leave her house unless she is blindfolded. And she's somebody who she likes her routine. She's very, very strange. She's very odd. And she will read like 6 or 7 books a day and keep strange hours, very agoraphobic. And doesn't like to be overwhelmed with too many sights, too many smells. She gets very overwhelmed very easily. And so she does not go to the crime scenes very often at all, but she is kind of the mastermind. And so she relies on her apprentice to do kind of the gathering and then bring the information back to her. And they are charged with solving this strange is it a murder? Is it an illness? Nobody really knows at the beginning, but there is a very influential kind of political figure who is staying at this wealthy family's house, and he is found dead, and there is a tree that has kind of sprouted and grown through him. So it's essentially like that's what his cause of death was, is this tree that grew through him. And so when more and more people who are extremely influential in this city are found dead in the exact same way, the duo have to kind of solve who is murdering these, since it's becoming more and more likely that it is a politically motivated assassination as opposed to simply some sort of illness. But it is very clearly, if it is an assassination attempt, it is, or if they were assassinations, then they were kind of the assassin introduced them to this illness in some way, and so it's kind of this biomedical warfare essentially. And the duo have to solve the crime. And so it is a very, very interesting read. I thought it was really fun. If you're interested in murder mysteries and you're kind of want to dip your toe in fantasy, then this one definitely is a good starting point. The fantasy world is kind of just the background as opposed to it being, in my opinion, a true fantasy novel. But I really, really enjoyed it. There are some really interesting twists. So I thought it was fun. I thought it was a really good time. It wasn't necessarily like gonna be the best book that I have read this year, but I enjoyed it. Thought it was entertaining, and I liked the characters. I liked the dynamic. It's very like Sherlock Holmes and Watson, like I had mentioned, and so it's not necessarily like it's a new dynamic, but it's fun. So that is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. The next book that I picked up here finally is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher, and I'm going to give this book, this one earns 7 people living in swords. I really like T. Kingfisher. I just kind of like how she will just kind of go for it. And this book is definitely one of those she just went for it stories. This book is about a woman who she is a widow. She is I think she's like 36 or 37. Her first husband has been dead for about 12 years. He died pretty suddenly, and then she was hired into this home as a housekeeper by her late husband's kind of really weird elderly uncle who collects ancient artifacts. And then when the elderly uncle died, he left everything to our main character instead of to his broader family. And so the broader family is very much not happy that the wealthy, eccentric uncle left her everything. They have locked her up and are going to force her to marry essentially her kind of like cousin-in-law, who is this kind of just horrible, weird, wet blanket of a character. And our main character here, her name's Hala. She essentially sees no way out of this, and so she plucks this sword that is on the wall, one of the kind of interesting artifacts that the uncle had collected, and she is going to kill herself with it because she thinks, hey, at least my own will leaves everything to my two nieces, so at least it will be they will be taken care of. If there's no way out and I'm being forced to marry this man that I don't love, then I should just kill myself. So she takes the sword off the wall, and when she kind of takes it out of its sheath, suddenly she still has the sword, but there is a man who appears, and this man is somebody who has been trapped in, his soul has been trapped in the sword for hundreds of years. He is from a distant, far off land, and now he is bound to kind of protect and serve the wielder of the sword.
There's a shortage of perfect breasts in this world. 'Twould be a pity to damage yours.
He lives his life kind of changing hands of who he has to protect. He likes some of his clients and he doesn't like others, but he is essentially immortal. If he gets killed in action, he just has to come back into the sword for a little bit, and he can heal, and when he's pulled back out, if he's in the sword for long enough, he never needs to eat, he never needs to drink, he never dies, and so he essentially is just this cell sword, but pretty literally. And so he is going to help her escape her prison, and he is going to take her to one of the temples where we have the Temple of the Rat, where they are essentially these lawyers, and so these lawyers are going to go and help her get her inheritance back, and so she is now on the road, and they face bandits, and they face various different like paladins, and they face these kind of creepy, spooky, jelly-like creatures. It's really interesting. It's very fun. Of course it is. It's T. Kingfisher. But yeah, it's this wacky, weird storyline. And underlying it, of course, it's a fantasy romance. And so, of course, she falls in love with the sword. But it was a really, really fun read. I always just like how interesting and fun all of T. Kingfisher's books are. I feel like she can't write a fantasy that doesn't have both elements of humor and horror, and she can't write a horror novel that doesn't have kind of fantasy elements to it. And so all of her books kind of are this really interesting genre blend, and this one has it too. So there are parts of it that feels very much like Hollow Places, which is another one of T. Kingfisher's horror novels. There are these verdant hills, these hills that move, and there are these evil creatures that live in the hills, and the hills section really feels very much like the Hollow Places. And so if you like the Hollow Places, but you also like fantasy romance, I would give this one a go. But it was a really good time. It was fun. I feel like I can't read a T. Kingfisher book and not say it was fun. But it's always a really good time. And I did not realize that it is in the same world as Paladin's Grace series, which I have raved about before on my channel, and it is the same universe, but in this instance, I know I mentioned earlier how the Witchwood Knot was in the same universe as the Regency fairy tales, but there were entire bits and pieces plopped down and written out in the chapters, just retold again. This one is not like that at all. There are little nudges to the world in the kind of Paladin's Grace, and you'll notice some of the same characters even, but it very much is not hitting you over the head with it. You don't need to have read one or the other. It explains perfectly, and it's just these little Easter eggs as opposed to being something that's kind of prerequisite reading. So I really enjoyed it. If you like Paladin's Grace, I would give this one a go. And there is a sequel coming out to this later this year. This book came out in, I think it was 2018, and we are getting the sequel finally in 2026. And so kind of glad that I picked this one up so close to the sequel coming out. So would definitely give this one a go, especially if you like weird, quirky, fun fantasy romance. That is Swordheart by T. Kingfisher. Kind of the last book that I have finished. I did start another one, so I'll talk about it pretty briefly. But the last book that I have finished so far in May is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. This book just came out. Fonda Lee wrote the very, very popular Jade City, which is the Greenbone Saga trilogy. And this is her latest standalone. And so this is, instead of it being a fantasy, this is a science fiction story. But I genuinely really enjoyed this one. I really liked the twists in it. I'm going to give this one 4 terraformed planets. This story is following kind of the final last job. It's like the last job trope. We have a woman who she is a contractor, and she is essentially hired to do whatever is necessary for her client. It is very much almost like a corporate samurai, is how I would kind of describe it. And so she is this kind of corporate assassin planet that has of these people who have left Earth. At one point, the planet was kind of being supported by Earth, but then Earth stopped giving shipments. And so this planet is slowly trying to become more and more habitable. There are cities kind of in this dome that has the correct, oxygen, hydrogen, makeup, and people are trying to terraform this city in this planet. But if you go outside of the bubble, essentially, it's uninhabitable, and so you die. And so essentially, to work is to live in this city, and so you have to work. And if you you've one free day a week, your entire life is around your job, whatever your job is. And if you are fired, then you are sent to die outside of this bubble. And so you kind of if you are fired, you can choose whether or not you take the severance package where your family is paid out for your work, essentially, or not. And so our main character here, named Isako, she is essentially the person who goes around and does the firing.
You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired. You're fired.
She is hired by a client, and so she essentially needs to do whatever her client wants her to do. Her client is a very wealthy director, and so whatever he needs done, that's what she will do. And a lot of her contract ends up needing to be the firing of old employees, gathering of intel, kind of corporate espionage. And so she is nearing the end of her life. She's actually kind of prepping for her own upcoming retirement. She's in her 50s. And she is she used to be one of the greatest assassins that there was, kind of is this well-known person in the field, but, she's old, and she's kind of nearing the end. A lot of her apprentices have grown up and have their own contracts, and suddenly she knows that she's nearing the end of her life, but her current employer, who she has the exclusive contract for, decides that when there is kind of this mass layoff that happens where she has to personally fire about 200 people, he decides to resign in protest. And so he ends up joining the group of people who are being fired and so sent out to die on this planet. And he decides he's going to resign in protest too. And so suddenly she has no contract, and she is essentially now given one last job. It's going to be kind of the one last payout before she is allowed to resign herself, because she knows that she can't leave her daughter and her ex-husband with nothing. And so this is the final job, and she is sent out to keep this man who is one of the youngest people to ever be potentially nominated as like one of the board of directors. One of his like fellow rivals, workplace rivals, does not want him to ascend to be part of the board. And so the Isako has to go and kind of find dirt on this man that is going to be enough to keep him from ascending to the board of directors. And so she luckily was the person who trained this man. His name is Uchi. Luckily, one of her old apprentices is Uchi's contractor, and so her apprentice is essentially the hired assassin for Uchi. And so she is going to kind of use her personal connections to old contacts as well to kind of find the dirt and see what's going on. And as she learns more and more, this kind of big corporate greed is uncovered. And so it's this really, really interesting kind of blend of this assassin type story in a science fiction world, as well as just kind of there's a lot of interesting parallels as well with kind of just like corporate greed and kind of capitalism. So I thought it was a really, really interesting. It's a standalone. Highly recommend it if you are interested in kind of action stories. It very much feels pretty John Wick. So if you want kind of the experienced assassin who is going on her final job, knowing it's going to be her last job, and kind of relying on her years of experience, but she is over the hill. She's past her prime, and kind of the uncovering corporate secrets. Very, very interesting. I would really recommend The Last Contract of Isako, and it's a standalone. It's just the one and done, so it's pretty low commitment. I would definitely recommend it. I had a really, really fun time with it. And then to kind of end this one out, I am about 200 pages in. I recently started this one, The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Won't get too in depth on this one. I just know that it is kind of one of those stories that a lot of people rave about, so wanted to quickly mention it. So far, I'm really, really enjoying it. Again, I'm going to reserve my judgment since I am only about 200 pages into about a 500-page book. So not quite halfway done yet, but I really like it so far. And I am looking forward to finishing that one. Hi. Say hi. Say hi. Say hi to your fans. All right, so that is the end of what I read this May. I hope that you liked it. I hope that you found something that you're interested in, either that you have something that you can add to your ever-growing TBR, or that maybe found a book that you were on the fence about and maybe are deciding that this one might not be for you. But thank you for spending your time with me and a little bit of time here with Dorito. And I hope that you had a fantastic May and looking forward to the beginnings of summer. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your month, and thank you for spending time with me. Say bye.